Dozens of boats carrying thousands of illegal migrants continue to arrive as Keir Starmer's popularity continues to plummet as his policies and targets may be doomed to fail. So welcome back and Happy New Year, but I am well aware that for many people it is not a Happy New Year because today begins the day where many children will not have a school to go to and many people continue to struggle with their finances. But such as it is, if you're new to me, I'm Daniel Shansmith, the Barrister of England and Wales, helping you to understand law and as it applies to news and current events. Because very often the law is simply not adequate. And when I say that it's not adequate, that means that the result is just not practically workable. And for many people, that is absolutely the case. I'll come back to the VAT on school fees thing in just a moment. But first of all, one of the stark areas that the law is failing this country, and I just say it as it is, so if you like this brutal approach, please do subscribe to the channel and support me. But one area that the law is absolutely failing this country as it is that with regard to small boats. Now, I do understand that the government is putting plans into place to try to tackle this from the other end, from the gang end. But if we take a look at the numbers as they are, you might feel that this law, as it is still not working. Taking a look at the last few days, from Christmas Day, 11 boats arrived carrying 451 people. On the 26th of December, another 10 boats arrived carrying 407 people, 5 boats with 305, 6 boats with 322, 6 boats on the 29th of December again with 291. Now, if I've punched that in the calculator correctly, that's 1,776 people. Now, clearly, with so many boats arriving on a daily basis, just because the weather has been good, and if the weather continues to be good and calm, then you can expect many more boats arriving into the UK with hundreds and totaling thousands of migrants that are entering the UK illegally. Now, yes, they are permitted to claim asylum when they arrive here, and there's a whole system in place to support people claiming asylum, many of whom may be doing so genuinely and fleeing war-torn countries, and many others who would face persecution and ill treatment if they were to return to their home countries. But we have heard in the news from some border agents that some asylum seekers are going home for the Christmas period. Now, I find this a little bit odd. Not only is the law failing to prevent them from coming in the first place, which I've dealt with in great detail in other videos, I'll do a brief recap in just a moment, but not only is it failing in that regard, but it is also failing if they are in the system, so to speak, that they are flying home for the holiday period. Now, if we have adequate laws in place and they are found at the border returning to what they might say is their home country, that surely goes against any application for asylum. But I'm not the immigration specialist here. I'll leave that to those that do have expertise and they can make that decision. In the meantime, the government's latest statement about this, I think I've covered before. They say they are stepping up and strengthening border security with a border security command backed by £150 million as part of a key plan to protect the borders, remove those with no legal right to be in the UK and introduce a new counter-terrorist style powers. But those that are in the UK without a legal right to be here, obviously if they are in the process of claiming asylum, their application is just going to wind its way through. Meanwhile, you'll have heard me talk about Labour's plans to recruit 6,500 teachers by using the money that they are going to raise by adding VAT to children's education, which, as you well know, I think is abhorrent. But it gets worse, because the Times reports that Labour has been warned by researchers that its promise to recruit 6,500 teachers is going to cost something in the region of £5 billion, which is significantly north of the £1.8 billion that they hope to raise with this VAT raid. That, of course, if the £1.8 billion is a realistic figure in the first place. So from today, independent schools are having to charge 20% on top of their fees. The bills that I've seen, and I've seen many of them because many people have sent them to me, they can only really isolate a few £100s here or there for lunches and books and things like that. But the vast majority of those fees are going to attract VAT, bumping up the fees by many thousands of pounds a year. According to the National Foundation for Educational Research that produced the report, the government would have to raise teacher salaries by 10% per year for the next 2 years to meet its recruitment target. At £5 billion a year, significantly more than the 1.8 that they hope to raise bearing in mind those figures may not be achievable, it looks like the government has what they call a considerable challenge to meet this target, bearing in mind 6,500 teachers does not go very far across 29,000 schools. And that is not including nurseries or any of the private schools. But then we come back to some of the discussions and comments on social media that I'd like to challenge, because some of them are not only heartless, but they are flat out wrong. The constant debate over whether this is a tax break or not, or a tax break that's being removed. Now, VAT imposed on education is a new tax to education. VAT itself is, of course, not new, and it's not a tax break because there's no deduction or qualifier for this tax in any way. It is simply a new way of adding tax to education, which is not done throughout the rest of Europe. But then somebody commented in the thread, rather naively in my view, that this somehow conflated the UK still being in the EU. And that wasn't obviously the subject of the conversation. The conversation was the rest of Europe do not apply VAT to education. That is because we shouldn't apply VAT to education, because education is not a luxury. And then obviously the second argument about all of that is whether people are paying twice by paying for private fees. And quite frankly, they are, because they are already paying their taxes, which pay for the state schools, and then paying for an additional school on that is already paying twice. So to tax them on top of that, as I say, I think is abhorrent, particularly when there hasn't been, in my view, a satisfactory impact assessment of how it's going to affect all of those schools over the long term, and in particular the thousands and then tens of thousands of children that will be affected by this policy. And in combination of all of those things, together with the farmers' tax and the winter fuel allowance and many other things that people have been upset about, it's no wonder that Keir Starmer's approval rating has plummeted to the worst of any MP in over 40 years, within just 5 months of this new government. Now, I don't want to be entirely unfair, and I will say and allow you to think that this is only the first few months of this new government. They are radical changes, and they may well lead to a better future. And whilst everything certainly looks particularly gloomy right now, I would like to think that things will get better. And sometimes you do need to break things to make them better. Maybe this is some kind of super genius plan that is going to work, and we will all have to just wait and see. At the moment, as I say, it looks fairly gloomy. So whilst I say Happy New Year, I say that with full conviction that hopefully things will get better this year. And throughout this year, my message to you is to pick goals and decide what you are going to achieve this year. And whilst you're doing all of that, please do keep an open mind. Do look at both sides of the equation. There may be something that you're missing out. And in the meantime, please do subscribe to the channel. I depend on you, and my goal for this year is 1 million subscribers. And it's all thanks to you. Thank you so much for subscribing and supporting me in the comment section. And as always, thank you for watching.